The moment everything stopped, Thomas did not cry. He just sat at the kitchen table and stared at his hands. Those hands had worked the same factory floor for 22 years, and now they had nothing to do. Before this story is over, you will understand why that was the best thing that ever happened to him. But right now, in that kitchen, it did not feel that way at all. Maybe you know that feeling, not the factory part, but the part where you did everything right and still ended up sitting somewhere, asking how it all fell apart so fast. The job gone, the relationship fraying at the edges, the doctor's words still ringing in your ears. You prayed, you waited, and the silence came back so loud it scared you. Stay with me, because what I am about to tell you is not a pep talk. It is something older than that, and by the end, you will see your closed doors completely differently. Thomas was the kind of man you could set your watch by. Up at 5, lunch packed by 5:30, at the plant by 6. He coached Little League on Saturdays and sat in the third pew on Sundays. He was not flashy, he was faithful, and for 22 years that was enough. Then on a Friday afternoon, the foreman gathered everyone on the floor. 10 minutes. That was all it took to end 2 decades of a man's working life. The plant was not downsizing, it was closing permanently. Thomas drove home in silence, walked through the back door, and sat down at that kitchen table. His wife Carol heard the door and came in from the other room. She looked at his face and did not ask any questions. That was October. By January, the silence in the house had changed. Fear had moved in quietly, the way it always does, and started rearranging things. Carol was scared and exhausted, and fear has a way of turning people sideways toward each other instead of toward the problem. The arguments grew longer and colder. Some nights Thomas slept on the couch. He stopped going to church, not because he stopped believing, but because he did not know how to sit in that building, singing about blessings while feeling like he was drowning in plain sight. He told his brother one evening out on the porch, the two of them sitting in the cold with their hands wrapped around coffee mugs, "I feel like I did everything I was supposed to do. I showed up, I worked hard, I took care of my family, and I got nothing for it." His brother did not argue. He did not offer solutions. He just said, "Keep going. That is all I know." Thomas did not feel like keeping going, but he did not quit either. And that small distinction is everything. He started filling his days with whatever was in front of him, fixed the back fence that had been leaning for 2 years, cleaned out the garage, took the dog on longer walks, and every morning before anyone else in the house was awake, he sat at that same kitchen table with his Bible open and a cup of coffee going cold beside him, not because he felt particularly close to God, but because he did not know what else to do with 5 o'clock in the morning. One of those mornings he was reading in Genesis, the story of Joseph, a young man thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold to strangers, falsely accused in a foreign country, thrown into prison for years. Every time Joseph seemed close to a way out, the story turned the wrong direction again. And yet, at the very end, after all of it, Joseph stood before the brothers who had destroyed his life and said something that made Thomas put his coffee down and read it twice. He said, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Thomas sat with that for a long time. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. He thought about the plant. He thought about the cold nights on the couch. He thought about every prayer that seemed to dissolve into the ceiling. And for the first time in 4 months, something in his chest loosened. Not the circumstances. The bank account was still the same. The marriage was still tender and bruised. But something in the way he was holding all of it shifted. He had been reading his own story like a man stranded in the middle of a chapter, calling the whole book a tragedy. Here is the first thing I want you to hear. Closed doors are not proof that God is done with you. They are proof that you have not seen the next page yet. 3 weeks later, a man from church mentioned that a distribution center was opening 40 miles out. They needed people who knew how to run a floor. Thomas applied on a Tuesday. He had the job by Friday. Same hands, different building. and within 6 months he was better at this work than he had ever been at the old job. The hours were different in a way that mattered. He was home for dinner. He was present in a way the old schedule had never allowed. He started coaching Little League again. He and Carol did not fix things overnight. There is no version of this story where everything snaps back into place the moment the new job starts. But they started talking again, really talking. The kind of talking you only do when the comfortable distance has been burned away and there is nothing left to hide behind. Some of those late-night conversations were the hardest they had ever had, and some of them were the closest they had ever been. Thomas told me later that he believed the shutdown saved his marriage, that without it, they would have kept drifting in opposite directions in a house that looked fine from the outside. He said, "If that plant never closes, I work there until I am 65 and I miss my own life." Read that sentence again, because I think some of you need to hear it applied to your own situation. Here is the second thing I want you to hear. There is a difference between being abandoned and being redirected. In the middle of a shutdown, those two things feel identical. That is the test. That is the place where a lot of people let go, right before the ground firms up beneath them. Joseph did not know what was coming when he was at the bottom of that pit. He only knew that he was still in the story. Thomas did not know about the distribution center when he was fixing a fence in the cold. He only knew to take the next small step, and that is all God has ever asked of anyone moving through a hard season. Not great faith, not perfect peace, just enough to take one more step without being able to see where it lands. Now I am talking to you directly. Something shut down in your life. Maybe recently, maybe it has been shutting down for a while and you have been white-knuckling it, trying to hold the old shape together. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you have been asking whether God sees it, whether any of this is going somewhere, whether the silence means what you are afraid it means. It does not mean what you are afraid it means. A field cannot be planted until the old crop is turned under. What looks like destruction from the surface is preparation from above. The shutdown you are standing in right now is not the final sentence. It may be the very turn that sends the rest of your story in the direction it was always supposed to go. You are not forgotten. You are not being punished. You are being held by hands that can see further down this road than you can. And the work in front of you right now is not to understand it. It is to stay in it. Fix the fence. Show up at 5 in the morning. Keep one small faithful habit going even when the feeling is completely gone. Because the story is not finished. And when you are finally standing on the other side of this, looking back at the closed doors and the silent prayers and the cold nights, I believe you will say what Thomas said. Not in spite of it, because of it.